Analytics are great, but don't let them be the foundation on which you play fantasy football. They're best utilized as a peripheral tool only.
Tyler Boyd's dip in production last year better correlates with Andy Dalton being off the field than it does with A.J. Green being off the field, despite public perception.
You can't watch just highlight film because highlight film only shows the good things. Watch the player's actual game tape because you see the good and the bad.
In 7 games in 2018, where all 3 starting Rams receivers were healthy, Brandon Cooks led the trio in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and total PPR points by a considerable margin.
Hey guys, welcome back into the RotoBros 2020 NFL Draft Scouting Brief Series. Been a little while, hasn't it? Feels like it's been weeks. It hasn't really, but it feels that way at least. The last brief we had was Arizona wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. So it's been a little while. I know obviously the whole coronavirus thing has really sort of, thrown a wrench in a lot of gears for a lot of people's plans and everything like that. So, of course, it's taken a little bit of a toll here as well. There hasn't been, there's been a lot going on, so there hasn't been as much time as I would previously have preferred to get these things done. But the good news is all of that is out of the way now, so we can continue on with the scouting briefs and a little more, releasing these things in the same sort of pace as we did prior. So today's episode, however, is going to be centered around Alabama/Oklahoma quarterback Jalen Hurts. Okay, I guess it would be Oklahoma quarterback Jalen Hurts because he transferred from Alabama. So, but let me tell you something. Before we get into this, my friend and I, Jake, we were at the Senior Bowl in January, and of course it's in Mobile, Alabama. Okay, and they have this sort of gymnasium looking thing set up, huge area, warehouse gym looking place in some sort of civic center where they have like the fan experience and all that, and you get the autographs, and there's a place for the kids and things like that, and they sell merchandise. Really cool place. And at the end, at the very up against the wall, at the very other end of the building, there are obviously tables where they have a bunch of different players from other conferences signing autographs. So they had the Pac-12 line, the Big 12 line, the SEC line, and of course we're in SEC country here. So the SEC East and SEC West lines were very, very long. But you want to know the longest line? They had a separate line for Jalen Hurts. I'm not kidding you. A separate line for Jalen Hurts, and they had a separate line for Alabama players as well, because of course we're in Mobile. So that was interesting. So Jalen Hurts was obviously there, but it was insane. The love that state still has for Jalen Hurts is just unbelievable. It's almost unlike anything I've ever seen before. He's a folk hero. He could run for governor of Alabama and probably win in a landslide. So if politics is in Jalen Hurts' future after football, he's probably got that locked and loaded on his side there. But the love for him was amazing. And when he came into the game, he came into the game several different, like 2 or 3 different times to run several, to command several drives. The fans just love him. They absolutely roared for him. And so, look, this is a kid. It's hard not to like him. He's got a great attitude. He's the type of guy that you want in your locker room. You want around your other players. This is a guy that, again, is really going to be one of the better people in the NFL. But how is he going to be as a player? And that's what we're really going to dissect because, of course, in the next month or two, we're all going to have some decisions to make in our Dynasty League about where we want to draft Jalen Hurts and if we want to draft him at all. So that's why we're here today, and we're going to help you guys out on deciding if this is a guy that you should really be targeting. So we'll start with the measurables, 6'1", 218. Okay, so he's got some pretty good size. I think there's a lot of people who like to nitpick, and they like, he's not 6'4", 6'5". Who cares? Okay, who cares? We've seen shorter quarterbacks do it before. 6'1" is nothing to scoff at, okay? And of course, 218, and he's been listed as heavy as 222 before as well. So that 6'1", 218, nothing to scoff at. So he's got good size for the position. Okay. And it's funny because most of the time when you talk about Jalen Hurts with a crowd of people, you either think he's going to make it, or you find people who think he's going to make it, or he's just going to be just another guy. Like, there's never really anybody, at least that I've come across, there's not really anybody who thinks he's going to be a great quarterback, and there's not really anybody who thinks he's going to be an absolute terrible quarterback and just completely fall out of the league. Okay, but you either think he's going to make it in the NFL and have some sort of halfway decent career, or you just think he's going to be another guy. Okay, we'll start with his arm here. His arm strength is there. It's pretty evident. Okay, his arm accuracy, however, is another story. He's got the arm strength to make all the throws. But I don't think he has the arm accuracy. Well, he doesn't. There's no thinking about it. He doesn't have the arm accuracy to make all of the throws. Okay, maybe in shorts on the combine field, okay, or on the practice field when there's nobody, rushing the passer. But when the lights are on and it's game time and you've got a defense coming at you full force, that's going to be a different story. That's where things start to shift. So that and his decision makings are some of his decision making is some of his biggest problems. Okay, but we'll get to that here shortly. But again, back to the size, back to the athletic profile. Very athletic for his size, guys. 6'1", 218, very athletic for that size. He does a good job on his feet, and he can make some things happen on the run as well. He runs with a good amount of power for a player at the quarterback position. A lot of guys are who are run first quarterbacks who aren't great passers. They typically don't have a lot of running power. Okay, but there are some that we've seen before. Okay, so he isn't going to make people miss on the run like Lamar Jackson or a Kyler Murray, but he will be able to withstand bigger blows. Unlike guys like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, he'll be able to withstand those bigger hits like a Cam Newton or a Tim Tebow, of which we've seen in the past. Okay? His mobility is definitely a plus for him, okay? But he does need to do a better job at sort of avoiding hits when he can. We've seen this with Tim Tebow got beat up quite a bit, wasn't very good at avoiding hits, but he was tough nonetheless, okay? He was very, very tough. He'd get up after, I don't even remember a time where Tim Tebow actually got hurt. I can't recall. Can you guys? You probably can't. With Cam Newton, it's been a different story. He's one of the biggest athletic freaks I think the NFL has probably ever seen, but unfortunately, he has never been great at avoiding those big hits, okay? And he's never been one to be a smart slider when it comes to avoiding those big hits, okay? Like Tom Brady is he's super smart when it comes to avoiding big hits, okay? He knows when to get down. Kyler Murray has taken, in 17 weeks, he took an amazing leap forward in that area as well. But Cam Newton has never been good at that, and we're seeing the effects of that now, year after year after year, of taking those not so smart hits, right? And so everybody's wondering, how's his foot? Okay. How's his shoulder? And those are the types of things that happen when you take on those that grunt of physicality and that grunt of hits like Cam Newton has. You're just never able to get down when you need to. So Jalen Hurts is kind of like that. He's not the best when it comes to avoiding those unnecessary hits. So that's something he does need to work on to avoid, some injury-plagued seasons like a Cam Newton has had before. Footwork. To me, it's a little bit of a mess. It's not the worst I've seen, but it is a little bit of a mess. It's not consistent. Okay, he does need work there. He has a bad habit of throwing off his back foot under pressure, and this really causes him to just constantly float passes. You see this probably more than anything on his film. His unfortunate ability to constantly float passes and throw an inaccurate football. Okay. And I get it. Some quarterbacks under pressure, they just fold. I don't want to say that Jalen Hurts folds under pressure, but because it's not the worst pocket presence that I've seen before, but he's also not very good when he stays in the pocket under pressure. That's his problem. And keep that in mind when he stays in the pocket. That's going to be a key thing we're going to talk about here in just a minute. So like when he's not deciding to take off and run and he decides to stay in that pocket and try to deliver that football under pressure, that's when he tends to fold more than anything. And that really, that really hurts his accuracy. And again, that really is going to, that's really going to increase the times that he's going to be throwing off his back foot under pressure. You'll see that a lot on the Texas tape. Numerous times on the Texas film, actually. But going back to, again, when that happens when he stays in the pocket. When he doesn't, his escapability in the pocket is among the best in the class at the quarterback position. Okay, he's difficult to bring down in the pocket, and a lot of that has to do with his nimble feet and sort of overall build. But when he's getting away from pressure and rolling out to throw, or breaking outside to run upfield, that's usually not an issue for Jalen. Okay, he's able to do that without a problem. We talked about his arm mechanics. His arm mechanics aren't terrible. Okay, I think there's this thing where, okay, if the quarterback is not super accurate and he struggles with decision making, immediately his arm mechanics are bad. That's not true. That's a myth. Don't let people run those two things together. Many times it is true. Because a lot of times the bad arm mechanics are, assisting in inaccurate footballs being thrown and bad decision making ultimately. That's not really the case that I see so much with Jalen Hurts, which is a good thing. There is some work that needs to be done here, though. But generally, he doesn't. It's not like he drops the ball down super low on his windup like a Tim Tebow used to. Who, obviously we saw Tim Tebow work for years to try to fix that. He improved, but he never got to the point where he needed it to be. His windup is a little long, but again, he doesn't drop the ball down like Tebow did, which is good. But he does have a pretty quick release. Jalen does, those are good starting points to becoming a more accurate passer. Having a quicker release, not dropping the football down during the windup very low. Those are all good starting points to become a more accurate and consistent passer, and they're going to help him. They're going to help his ability to have his quarterback coach come to him and say, look, these are some of the things that we need to work on. Okay? It's going to improve his ability to throw the football. Okay? If he, of course, has the determination, the motivation to do that, and the work ethic to do that, which I think a guy with Jalen Hurts' mindset and his character, I don't think that's going to be a problem either. So these are all good things that he has going for him. So he has things to work on, but he's on the right track, in other words. And I think it's going to be it's a good starting point to becoming a more accurate and consistent passer, as I said, because right now I don't think he's really what you can call a passer. Okay, I think he's more of a thrower. He's just out there throwing the football, especially from the pocket. Okay, he's just not at that point where he can be considered a passer. You hear people talk about, he's more of a thrower and not a passer, and that just means you're pretty much just slinging the football around, playing backyard football, and doing whatever you can. Johnny Manziel was that way, right? Johnny Manziel was just a thrower. He was just out there ad-libbing essentially everything and hoping for the best. Not really much of a passer, never really became much of a passer. Jalen Hurts is kind of that same way. I'm not comparing the two, but I kind of am in that sort of in that one single sense. He's not really much of a passer yet. Peyton was a passer. Breeze, Brady, Rod, those are guys that are passers. Russell Wilson, a passer. He's not just out there throwing the football, slinging it around. Kyler Murray is becoming more of a passer. So there are these guys in the NFL where it's a little sort of hit or miss. It's like splitting hairs, I guess, thrower and passer, but you sort of split the hairs on those two terms, and you kind of see what the differences are and what people mean when they say that. So that's what people mean, and that's kind of where Jalen Hurts is. He's kind of more of a thrower right now, but he's going to need to – nobody should be drafting him, and in reality, I mean, nobody should be drafting him as a starter, okay? And he's not going to be drafted as a starter. There's not enough quarterback positions open right now for him to be drafted as a starter. So he's going to be drafted as a backup, which is fine, and that'll give him the opportunity to sort of learn from the starter and learn from his quarterback coaches and get a little more refined and a little more seasoned to become more of a passer than he currently is. Decision-making, we talked about earlier, definitely just needs a lot of work. His film is just littered with examples of this, but there's a play on the Texas Tech film where I think this is just the epitome of what I'm talking about. He decides to toss the ball, and I can't recall what minute mark it is in the film, but you'll watch the Texas Tech film and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. There's a play in the Texas Tech film where he decides to toss the ball way downfield into what was essentially triple coverage. Okay. And the play works out though, because the receiver caught the ball. But with these particular windows on this play, these windows here, you make these same decisions in the NFL, those windows shrink in the NFL. And decisions like that are not going to hold up nearly as much and nearly as often as they do against defenses like you're playing in the Big 12. Okay, the NFL is a different... You're not playing Big 12 defenses every year or every week. Okay, like you were in college. But this decision, I think, was, when you watch it back, this decision in particular was made because he was pretty much locked on to his man the entire time. Okay? But had he spent more time, and we're going to touch on this in a minute, if he had spent more time going through his progressions, he would have seen that his man on the outside had his defender badly beat, and he could have laid it up to him downfield for a much easier play. Okay, the guy on the outside of the right side of the field at the top of your screen when you're watching the film, he had his guy beat by what I remember to be about 4 or 5 feet, maybe longer, maybe more than that, probably more than that actually. Maybe almost 5 yards. I mean, he had him beat pretty bad because the corner had almost, well, the safety had bit. Okay, he'd been watching Jalen Hurts' eyes, and he bit. He saw where Jalen Hurts was planning to throw, so he bit and ran to the middle of the field to cover the other man or to assist his other defenders in covering the other man. And then, of course, the corner sort of slowed and hesitated a little bit, and that's why his receiver just ran right past him. But had he gone through his progressions and made that last-minute change and looked off the safety properly, he would have been able to land what probably would have turned into a touchdown because there was no one else around. His receiver would have blown by everybody. He wouldn't have been touched going into the end zone. So it probably would have wound up as a touchdown. It did work out because it was a big gain, but those are sort of the decisions that you can see. It worked out in that particular situation. But that decision that he made on that play would hardly ever work out in the NFL. He's a much more accurate and reliable passer when he's on the run. We sort of mentioned, in the pocket, he struggles a little bit when under pressure. But on the run, he's been very good. Strangely enough. And I think that's actually a good thing for him because he looks to run so early after the ball is snapped many times. Okay, so if he's going to be, deciding to go on the run so much, the silver lining here is that he becomes a more competent passer at this point in the play, which is strange to a lot of people because going back to a guy like Dwayne Haskins last year coming out, it was the exact opposite, which it is for a lot of quarterbacks. It was the exact... Dwayne Haskins, not so much now, but coming out of Ohio State and at Ohio State was so good in the pocket. Amazing in the pocket. But as soon as you got him under pressure and got him on the run, he was terrible. He was a completely different quarterback. That was one of my biggest knocks that was one of my biggest knocks on Dwayne last year coming out. I've never been a Haskins guy. I think they should draft Tua this year, but that's for another show altogether. But Jalen does not have that problem. It's the exact opposite. Okay, his problem comes in the pocket, not when he's on the run. So his internal clock also it just isn't there at this point. That's going to have to develop. This is going to be a problem, I think, for him against better defenses and more complex schemes. So this is going to be something that the quarterback coach and the head coach really need to get with Jalen Hurts and work on. And even the veteran quarterback that he ends up playing behind at that point, at some point, he's going to have to get with them and really learn, okay, when to get rid of the football, how long to hold on to the football, when to escape out of the pocket. When he does escape, again, his escapability is great. It's among the best in the class. But the problem is when. Okay, it's his timing in the pocket, and that definitely needs to improve for Jalen Hurts. He does commit the cardinal sin for quarterbacks, guys. You hear me talk about it all the time. Staring down receivers, locking onto his target without properly going through progressions. This gets him in trouble quite a bit. when throwing from the pocket, and it leads to a lot more of the reckless decisions, sort of that we discussed earlier. Receivers, notably CeeDee Lamb, they bailed him out on a lot of his off-target throws, on a lot of them, and you can see it plain as day. There are some throws that just shouldn't have been thrown, but guys like CeeDee Lamb, who has elite body control, elite hands, and is a great route runner in his own right, having a receiver like that helped Jalen Hurts more than anybody would really ever know or understand, made him look a lot better than he actually was. We kind of talked about this effect that sometimes wide receivers have on quarterbacks with the Donovan Peoples several weeks ago with the Donovan Peoples-Jones scouting brief. You guys know he's one of my favorite receivers. I think he's a top 5 receiver right now in this class. And so I love this guy. And so he was a guy that kind of did this same thing for Shea Patterson at Michigan. Okay. Shea Patterson was so bad at Michigan, so underwhelming and so up and down and inconsistent that a guy with DPJ's talent was unable, okay, to even put together the production profile that a lot of people would like to see. But if you go back and you watch a lot of his film, you'll see Shea Patterson's inaccuracy, his inconsistency was bailed out a lot by DPJ. He made some incredible catches, some absolutely phenomenal catches that really made Shea Patterson look better than he was. You watch some of this stuff and you're like, that was a pretty good throw by Shea Patterson. No, it actually wasn't. It actually wasn't. DPJ is just so athletic and has such elite body control and excellent ball skills when the ball is in the air to go up and just grab it. It just makes it look like Shea Patterson put it in the right spot. And this isn't a myth. This is a real thing that happens. This is a real thing that happens. And Shea Patterson and Jalen Hurts have that in common. Okay, DPJ and CeeDee Lamb bailed out their quarterback a lot, and you can see that. Not just CeeDee Lamb, his other receivers are talented as well over there in Oklahoma, but CeeDee Lamb, most notably, being the number one guy, did it more than anybody. So, guys, look, overall, I liken Jalen Hurts to a guy like Tyrod Taylor, okay? A guy that I think has plus mobility. Tyrod, however, it's worth noting, Tyrod is much better at avoiding hits on the run than Jalen is. He's an inconsistent passer, kind of that struggles with decision-making at times, just like, Tyrod Taylor, but can come in when needed, win a game or two, and just sort of be an okay starter for long stretches. Your starter goes down. Had Phillip Rivers gone down this year and Tyrod Taylor had to come in for the Chargers, the Chargers wouldn't have panicked. Okay, Tyrod Taylor's not taking you to the playoffs, but for an 8-game stretch, maybe you go 4-3, maybe you go 3-5, maybe you go 4-4. You're not going to go 1-7. But you're also not going to go 7-1. Okay, there's going to be those ups and downs. He's going to make some solid throws sometimes. He's going to make a lot of things happen on the run, pick up some extra yards, have that dual threat ability. But the inconsistency is going to be the problem with a guy like Tyrod. It's the same thing with Jalen Hurts, and that's kind of why Tyrod is sort of my NFL comp for Jalen. Jalen has a little bit more size and sort of meat on him from a physical standpoint, but Jalen, same height and all that. But again, Jalen does have probably the ability to take some bigger hits. But regardless, Tyrod is again better at avoiding those hits that we've talked about. But for the most part, from a career standpoint and from a play standpoint, I think Jalen Hurts to me is a lot like Tyrod Taylor and ultimately will be that guy. I do think ultimately Jalen is a guy that will have a long NFL career, much like a Tyrod Taylor, but it won't be as a franchise quarterback, much like as a Tyrod Taylor. I just don't see him being a guy that is a team starting quarterback for very long, for even 2 to 3 years. Okay, I think he's a decent backup level quarterback in the NFL. He's going to have plenty of ups and downs. I do. He will, however, at some point get his shot to be a starter at some point. Okay. But long term, and I think he'll show probably some good things here and there early on. But then I think once defenses catch up and they start to level out, they start to figure out Jalen Hurts, I think you're going to start seeing that I don't think it's wise to expect Jalen to be a difference-making starting quarterback in the NFL. From a fantasy perspective, to be honest with you, I wouldn't take him before the 4th round, to early 5th round in a 1 QB dynasty rookie draft, in a traditional rookie draft. If you're in need of a quarterback and you have an early pick, I would not pass on Burrow or Tua or Love or Justin Herbert just so that you can say, okay, I'll take a tight end here, a wide receiver here, and then I'll take Jalen Hurts in the 5th. If quarterback is your biggest need, go get a difference-making quarterback, one of those 4 guys that is going to be drafted to be a starter, that is going to make a day 1 impact, and probably make a bigger impact long-term than a guy like Jalen Hurts. Okay, don't just pass on your biggest need for, to take a huge risk in Jalen Hurts in the 4th or 5th round in your rookie draft, because you shouldn't expect him to anchor your fantasy team for years to come. And therefore, you shouldn't be overdrafting him, no matter really where he lands. Personally, I don't care if Miami passes on Tua or Herbert and takes Jalen Hurts in the 2nd or 3rd round. My stance won't change. Jalen at that point will likely be a starter at some point. He won't start over a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, week 1, but maybe by week 6 or 7, he is the starting quarterback. And maybe while the needle maybe moves a little bit and the hype machine starts to get rolling on Jalen Hurts, I don't think the consistency will be there, especially long term. So I just don't think it'll end up being a good decision for you in the long run. Now, if you take a quarterback early and then you want to take Jalen Hurts later, I get that. Double up on QBs just in case. But I don't think you should be going into it saying, okay, I'm going to take Jalen here in the 4th or 5th round, or maybe even the 3rd round, and I'm going to pass on one of these, more talented quarterbacks that's obviously going to be in a better situation right off the bat. He's just not a guy to be overdrafting. But we started off the episode by saying this: do I want him in my locker room? Yes. Would I have him as a backup quarterback / emergency spot starter? Yes. Okay, that's the type of guy that I think Jalen Hurts is going to be, and I say it all the time. There's no problem with that. There is a spot in the league for these guys. We see it every year. There's a spot in the league, but I don't think from a fantasy perspective, because this is obviously what the show is geared to, is fantasy. I don't think you should be expecting a lot out of Jalen Hurts. So that's kind of where I'm at on Jalen Hurts, guys. I hope you I hope I was able to sort of give you a little bit more of an insight into what I've seen on Jalen again. But look, I say it all the time, watch the tape for yourself. Go to YouTube, type in Jalen Hurts versus, check it out for yourself, and see what things you agree with me on, what things you don't agree with me on. And then we can talk about that as well. You can hit me up on Twitter at RotoBros Chris, and we can talk about it there. Or you can find me on Facebook at FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis, the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. It's a great group year-round, and we're still rolling with this whole coronavirus thing going around. So the coronavirus can come and go as much as it wants, but it's not going to stop FSA from rolling. It's not going to stop the RotoBros either. So guys, definitely check that out. Definitely check out the RotoBros Patreon as well. For $5 a month, you will get exclusive access. One of the biggest perks, you'll get exclusive access to the RotoBros Discord chat, which is a private exclusive chat. You'll be able to reach myself and my partner Mark Wimkin on as well. And you'll also be able to talk fantasy and talk just general sports with all the other 40, 50 patrons as well. You'll also, in addition to having that for the $5 a month of the RotoBros Patreon, you'll get the Discord chat. You will get all these scouting briefs as well. You're going to get Mark and Producer Man's DFS / Best Ball podcast throughout the year as well. And then you're also going to get the Mother podcast. We call it the Mother podcast, the main podcast throughout the season with myself and Mark. And with myself and Mark coming up here in the next several weeks, you're going to get the Darkly Dreaming Dynasty podcast as well. So that we're going to be releasing that here shortly. So getting everything together with that. So we're going to have you covered from all angles year round here coming up, guys. So we appreciate the continued support. Guys, thank you for listening. We love you guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode and hope you continue to enjoy these scouting briefs as well. Everybody stay safe out there. And as always, keep balling, baby.